One of the challenges in implementing the new fraud detection and national security operation was that we didn't have much data to use to develop our fraud strategy. As found by the General Accounting Office in 2002, albeit after 9/11, but researched and prepared before that eventful day, the GAO found that legacy INS did not truly have an anti-fraud strategy, did not have the data to even determine the significance of fraud, the type of fraud, didn't have any major policies, and did not even have the capability to collect the data or the system to track it. Over a course of about 5 years, CIS, through its fraud detection and national security operation, conducted 8 benefit fraud assessments. And when I say conducted, the FDNS operation performed its duties regarding the inquiry into the fraud and its findings. We completed 4 reports that were actually approved and released publicly. The other 4 that were done, while FDNS drafted the reports, at the time of my retirement, had not been completed, had been through the circulation and the approval process for finalization and publication. And there's a number of reasons. And first, you have to understand that when we first stood up FDNS, we did not have any legacy INS data. We had nothing but anecdotal information, and we needed data. The GAO emphasized that, and they were absolutely right. So we needed that BFA tool to hopefully within a year or so give us the data we needed so that we could start developing the policies and the procedures and the systems, the analytic-based systems, etc. So we did that. It was meant to be an internal tool. The benefit fraud assessments, BFAs, were not intended to be a public document. So we basically got 3 done. They were extremely valuable. They led to regulatory changes, policy changes, the identification of fraud indicators, the issuance of guidance, training, blah, 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 blah. When we reached the assessment, the study of H-1B petitions, an extremely sensitive area today, especially with regard to the shortage of visa numbers and how quickly they're used up and how there's an ongoing effort, lobbyist otherwise, to increase the number of H-1B visas, and the fact that it hasn't happened yet, but it's likely to happen. But there's a lot of issues, a lot of sensitivities. It was then that in an effort to get that study approved and the report finalized, FDNS had to compromise, and we agreed, and rightfully so, that some of the fraud that we found may have been more non-compliance, not necessarily knowing fraud, that we agreed in the area of the H-1B that a certain percentage was probably more non-compliance. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't intentional non-compliance. Now, there's an argument there. And what's the saying? Statistics are as good as a statistician, and you can make numbers talk any way you want. Well, that kind of reminds me of what we went through in an internal dialogue and process with regard to, is it fraud or isn't it fraud? And is it non-compliance? Is it deliberate? Is it unintentional? The bottom line is when we finally finished that report, I think it may have taken 2 years just to reach an agreement on the report. We ended up changing the name of the report to Benefit Fraud and Compliance Assessment. And while the overall rate of fraud and non-compliance was 21%, I believe, and I think 15% fraud and 6% non-compliance. So, understanding how that became difficult, because that report was very sensitive. You've got the legal community, the business community, the immigrant community. Everyone's impacted, and not everyone has the same position. Well, it's kind of like that within government too. Whether it's within your agency, your department, the White House, whatever, it's very similar. And refer to it as internal and external politics. And what that resulted in is the inability to get the other four finalized. FDNS officers need to have fraud indicators. We need to tell them what to look for. We need to build systems that will do that in an electronic manner. And we've got the technology today to do that. We are doing that. We need to do it more across the board with all the petitions and forms, and we need to do it more quickly. And CIS needs to find a way to crack that nut with regard to getting those assessments done and expanding their compliance review program. And I've been retired over a year now, and it's my understanding there hasn't been any progress.